For the 2024 HCES Engineers Week banquet in Honolulu, the engineers and architects of Hawaii were honored to nominate EAH Emeritus member Frank Hermann for the Lifetime Achievement Award. This video features Frank's acceptance of the Lifetime Achievement Award. Frank Hermann is an airport design engineer practicing for over 60 years. Frank's past EAH presentations are available at the EAH YouTube channel and on Alalo. Visit eahawaii.org for the links.
Frank Hermann is a civil engineer with over 60 years of engineering experience, nearly all of which was in Hawaii and the Pacific Islands. His engineering centered on the design and construction of airports, taxiways, aprons, and terminals. He is known throughout his field as an expert for all aspects in airport design, construction, and maintenance. Starting in the 1960s, Frank was a pioneer in the development of modern airport design, which we all utilize but take for granted in our jet travels today. Frank started his career at the Bureau of Public Roads, BPR, now the Federal Highway Administration. While at BPR, he earned a management degree in urban planning, and he had the opportunity to work on the Penn Jersey traffic study, which was the first traffic study to use a computer for data analysis. That experience and training gave Frank the opportunity to study the impacts of airport developments on urban highway transportation. In 1966, now with the FAA, his expertise led him to a trip to Hawaii to review the siting of the proposed new Kona Airport on Hawaii Island. What was being proposed was to just expand the existing airport just blocks from downtown Kona. But after walking the Keyhole Point lava field site and studying the community, Frank submitted his recommendation to build the airport on the hill above Keyhole Point, and it was approved. During the design, there were limited funds, so Frank, with an engineer from Bechtel, conceived the unique outdoor Kona terminal buildings travelers enjoy today. Next, Frank worked with Owen Miyamoto on the Honolulu New Reef runway and other projects. Frank credits Owen's forward-looking airport design goals that prepared Honolulu's airport for the new generation of jumbo jets, starting with the Boeing 747. In community meetings for the Reef runway, his arguments for reduced airport noise with the building of the Reef runway resulted in community support for the project, even to the point of hiring lawyers to argue in favor of the Reef runway in a federal case in San Francisco that opposed the construction. His design improved drainage out of Keehee Lagoon, which had previously been dredged for seaplane operations for World War II. His design allowed for the natural mountain wash to flush the lagoon. In Frank's words,
"They were polluted, they were horrible, and really a big mess."
The Reef runway was the first airport project of its size to get formal environmental approval after submittal of the newly required environmental impact statements in the 1970s and became the world's first major runway built entirely offshore. With the FAA and as a project manager with Parsons Hawaii, Frank led the development of airport facilities in Hawaii and across the Pacific. Frank recommended the second runway for Lihue Airport, which would allow safer takeoffs and landings over the ocean. In Majuro, he helped build an airport and terminal and a unique runway rain catchment system. In Kosrae, Frank designed the shore protection and later designs to rebuild the runway and terminal facilities. In Pohnpei, he studied and recommended the location of the airport on an offshore island and directed the designs for the runway, taxiways, terminal apron, and terminal. In Truk, he designed the new runway and terminal at the old Japanese Coral Runway and included a runway turnaround for safer takeoffs. In Guam, he participated in the concepts for the new terminal layout and designed new taxiways and aprons. In Saipan, he helped design a new runway and terminal at the World War II airport. In Yap, he consulted in the early site planning for the airport and later the airport apron repaving. In Palau, he consulted on the site planning and construction of the runway, taxiway, apron, and terminal, and later the rebuild of the runway. At Clark Air Base in the Philippines, he worked on building a new runway with one of the first end-around taxiways. He also consulted on the Taipei, Taiwan airport runways and taxiways. Frank always strove to look for the most appropriate and cost-effective way to provide a finished project with the ability to expand as required and not require early maintenance. At the age of 92, Frank is still an active contributing member on engineering society committees, but now usually attends via Zoom. He is on 2 ASCE airfield committees, the TD&I Airfield Planning and Operations Committee and the TD&I Airport Pavement Committee. On the ASCE Airfield Pavement Committee, Frank helped promote smoothness, joint design, new materials, and other modifications to perform well in areas close to the equator. Frank was the Airfield Paving Engineer of the Year awardee by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Frank also serves on 2 National Academies Transportation Research Boards, the Airport Terminals and Ground Access Committee and the Aircraft Airport Compatibility Committee. He served as the Technical Program Chair and Proceedings Editor for the 1997 Airport Pavement Committee Conference. Frank maintains his memberships in American Society of Civil Engineers, Society of Military Engineers, Transportation Research Board, and the Engineers and Architects of Hawaii. The Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies is honored to present to Frank V. Hermann, P.E., the 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award for his overall breadth of work and his sustained engineering experience, which he shared with others in his profession through his engineering societies and companies. His lifetime achievements and contributions have benefited and will continue to benefit Hawaii and the Pacific Islands, and will allow the Pacific's airplane passengers and airport staff to travel and work efficiently and safely far into the future. The Hawaii Council of Engineering Societies and their members congratulate Frank for his lifetime achievements.
And this award to you, Frank, and then you can have some words. I better put it in there. But it's hard to say much after that, I guess. I did want to, though, point out that there's no way that I did these things. They were done by a lot of other people. I was the person who took the things that they wanted to be done and managed to get them built. The first one was the K Holy Point, which is why I was over here. Honolulu was actually an FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. It was a regional office. That is the first level down from headquarters in Washington. It's a very major level. Local FAA is not that level anymore. It's just a local area office. The man who brought me out sent me down to Kona to come out with a recommendation. I spent about a week full-time, a couple of trips down, had the pleasure of seeing the hula dancing by the woman who at the time was the leading hula organization, or whatever you would call it in the state, that was on the Kona coast, and she was doing, and I was lucky enough to see one of her sessions, which I do appreciate. At any rate, I came back to Honolulu and finally gave them my recommendation that not only should the airport move down there, but not to build it as a short 6,000-foot runway for local service, build it for Trans-Pacific service, and not only that, build it for a possible second runway, because at that time Honolulu was being overcrowded with aviation due to the Vietnam War. And the airport in Honolulu was a nightmare. It was part of the problems that led to eventually the Reef Runway, which is so many heavy, loud, noisy airplanes, and none of you probably would ever imagine what those original KC-135 and the original 707s sounded like, but they were really noisy and horrible. At any rate, they accepted the idea, and then the man who brought me over here gave me the rest of the papers. The whole local office and headquarters had rejected the idea of moving to Keaholy Point. They thought a little angled runway there at Kona could serve better. And the major problem, according to them, at Kona was that the planes landed right next to the hotel. And at 7 o'clock, if you weren't already in the dining hall, there was no way you were going to get any meal in the dining hall until everybody ate. It woke everybody up. The planes literally flew right almost in the upper floor of the 2 hotels right on the Kona city. So that was my first real project. The next one probably was the two buildings at Honolulu. And there, Owen Miyamoto, whose picture you saw in here, and Dr. Matsuda, who was the head of the Department of Transportation, wanted us to build for the future. And the future we were going to build for after working with Boeing and some others, it was a airplane that would make the new A380, which was just flying through here, that Airbus plane, would still be almost a life raft. It was going to be 1.5 million pounds, was going to have even larger wingspans, and we designed, and when I say we, I mean I helped a lot in it, obviously I didn't do it, but we designed the gull wings so they could accommodate a 2-level airplane with the larger wings. And I was really pleased and excited on landing to happen to be on that side of the plane, looking out the window and seeing the second level loading bridges that you've added to those terminals. I'd also be interested, and if anybody knows who to contact, I would like to know how it worked and what was done in the planning that helped and did make it work, and what we should have thought about 50 years ago when we did the work to put in those terminals. It'd be interesting. The other one is, of course, the reef runway. There we had a situation of building a runway out of a reef that was an environmentally interesting reef. We realized anything we built was going to have to be environmentally acceptable, and literally had a full-time staff member who did nothing but work with us on the environmental issues and a lot of issues. In fact, I mentioned to somebody here one of the things we had to do, which Boston Sumi may have been on, was try to establish the boundaries, and it was impossible to identify some of the boundaries on the Honolulu-Hickman boundary lines. So we actually set ourselves back an extra 5 feet of space to allow for that possible boundary error, so that we knew the taxiway out to the runway was going to be within our property should we have a wrong boundary location. We did a lot of great work on that reef runway that set new standards. That picture you saw of the 2 pictures actually was a map that we were using on a board, and we would have meetings in Kali with the people. And I would have the reef runway on a plastic sheet that overlaid a map with that approach route, and the approach route, of course, of the existing runway. And I'd ask you to mark on a plastic sheet. And I bring this up, if you were working with people, this is sort of trick to play. I'd ask you to please show me where your house is. And there you are living in Kali, so we draw a little spot around your house. Then I'd slide the whole thing up to the reef runway, was overlaying the present runway, and your house would be somewhere up in the hills of Kali. And I said, you're up to that street up there. Listen to the planes as they take off today, because that's what they're going to sound like when they take off from the reef runway. And as was mentioned in there, the people themselves hired a lawyer to go to San Francisco to fight the environmental issues and got us to be the first project. And that also paid off for us because the FAA wasn't able to spend all their money. So like one time I got a call, can you get a project awarded within 30 days? We've got $10 million, we don't know what we can do with it because the other airports were still not able to get their environmental. So I bring those up, doing things like this, getting involved internationally. By being international, I knew what Boeing was going to do in the future. I knew what their new 777, the 777, was going to have 6 50,000-pound wheels together rather than just 4. And so we were able to put that kind of thinking into our designs, our planning, our layouts, and everything else. And so I encourage you to get involved nationally and internationally with those committees. It will really help you in your work, and but thank you very, very much.
Engineers and architects of Hawaii welcome your comments on this program and any of our recent programs. We encourage your direct participation in this community outreach. So please email us your comments and ideas at eahawaii@gmail.com.